Tonight is Thursday, April 26th, 2018. This is the Westwood Board of Selectmen. We will begin, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, I apologize for being tardy. I had in my mind 7:30. The agenda's at 7. We will grant permission to Westcat Media Center to audio and video record tonight's proceeding. Is there anybody else who wishes to record? Hearing none. Okay. So at this time, the Board of Selectmen will be going into executive session to discuss one issue related to the sale, lease, exchange of real property related to the Islington Center redevelopment, of which would have a detrimental effect on the position of the governing body if discussion were an open session. The board will be returning to open session shortly.
I move we go into executive session for the aforementioned reason.
I'll second.
Mr. Walsh?
Aye.
Mrs. Hyde?
Aye.
I vote aye as well. The board will be in executive session. Okay, it's Thursday, April 26th. The Westwood Board of Selectmen is returning to open session. With us is Dan Bailey, our outside counsel, and Nora Locknane, our Director of Economic Development, who will present on the land disposition agreement regarding the Islington project. Or where are we?
Well, the land disposition agreement document itself is close to final. There are a few minor, largely legal items, cleanup items, that we have yet to do. What this document does is it's the legal agreement between the town and Petruzziello Properties, under which, each side makes certain commitments. There are, just to remind you, that there are 4 town parcels, that are being exchanged with, or being sold to Petruzziello in exchange for money and land. This spells out how that will all work. I can report to the board when I last reported to you and when we reported to the Finance Commission earlier in the week. The purchase price at that point was $2 million. It has been increased to $2.2 million. This also includes many of the commitments that are made in the special permit, such as the commitment to affordable housing for 1 additional unit at 321 Washington Street, and then 2 additional units in the future. It calls for a 3-phase closing. As we've discussed, the first phase being the closing on the School Street side. The municipal parking lot would be transferred to Mr. Petruzziello. He would then construct the new CVS and a new municipal lot and convey that lot back to us. The second phase is the Wentworth Hall disposition. That gets transferred to Mr. Petruzziello so that he can reconstruct the existing CVS building into new premises for MMO and for retail uses. And then the third phase is the transfer of the ICC. That comes last because the town needs those, its offices there, and those offices wouldn't be available until we obtain the municipal parking lot and the Wentworth Hall, what we're calling reserve space on the School Street side, and build move Wentworth Hall and build an addition to it for the community space that will be there. There's not a lot more. I mean, it's fairly typical legal boilerplate, environmental, reviews and title reviews, and there are outside dates for closings that if Mr. Petruzziello cannot make those dates, then the agreement would terminate, so that it's not open-ended forever. And I think that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
So Dan, you forgot an important piece of this. So 2.2 is the minimum that we will get for Petruzziello.
Yep.
At year 3, before the closing of the ICC, there'll be a reevaluation or a appraisal.
Yes.
And at that appraisal, if the property values have increased, we would get that increase above, anything above the 2.2.
Yes, the 2.2 million is a floor. The expectation is that as development progresses, property values will increase.
So that the 2.2 is not not necessarily the final number.
No.
On the other hand, if the economy tanks, we still have 2.2.
We still have 2.2.
Guaranteed.
That's right.
Because I think that would be important for the public to
Yeah,
understand.
yeah,
Okay.
Can you give us an update on the soil study?
absolutely. I have we engaged Sanborn Head and Associates, which is an environmental consulting firm, to go out to the site and evaluate what it would cost to remove soils. We've got a 4,000 square foot hole that we'll be digging out there approximately. And that site, the municipal parking lot, was previously a Texaco station. We know, because we have the old reports, that there are residual levels of contamination in the soils there. They're perfectly suitable for being underneath a parking lot, but once, under DEP's rules, once you start to dig up old contaminated sites, you have to handle the soils properly. What does that mean? That means all sorts of different classifications that they have, and depending on classification, you send the soils to, either a highly protective landfill or to an asphalt plant. What happens is our consultant has gone out there and run a slew of tests on the existing soil. They drilled holes in the ground to get at the soils. And they've been able to come back and say, well, your worst case scenario for soil disposal would be about $120,000. That assumes that all of the soils will have to be removed from the site and deposited at a facility that isn't owned by the town. There's one set of soils, several 1,000 yards, that is contaminated, that has to go to probably to a landfill to be used for. They use it for daily cover in a landfill, so it's minor levels, but still not something that you would want to see showing up in somebody's backyard. The remainder of the soils are Class A soils, which means that they can be reused by the Department of Public Works or by the town, just so long as they're being reused on a site with similar soils. And so what you do when it comes time, you've got a big pile of soils, you test them again, and then you evaluate where you want to put them. You do some testing, and there's DEP guidelines about whether they can be put, for example, over over at the DPW yard. And then used by DPW on an as-necessary basis. One thing that we did find from this testing is that there's ledge at about 10 to 11 feet. We can be digging up to 13 or 14 feet. We don't have a price on that ledge removal. We didn't ask the consultant to do that, but I'll go back to them tomorrow and start working with them to find what out there.
Okay.
I know you have to leave, so we will
I'm okay.
turn it over to
Another
Nora.
10 minutes.
When you leave. Nora, do you want to just walk through some of the qualitative and quantitative
Sure.
level pieces?
So the most important part on the quantitative side is we would be selling a total of 0.55 acres to the developer, and we would be receiving at least $2.2 million for that piece of land. That's equivalent to over $3.9 million per acre, which far exceeds the price of any property anywhere in Westwood. The relocation, renovation, addition of Wentworth Hall would cost us approximately $3.7 million. That's assuming about $3.5 for the work that needs to be done and an allowance for the removal of unsuitable soils of up to $120,000, plus an allowance for the removal of ledge. That would require the town to have its own investment of approximately $1.5 million over and above the $2.2 million that the developer is paying. That $1.5 million would end up allowing the town to have a single property in Islington that would be worth about $4.2 million. So the value of the property, less the town's investment of about $1.5 million, would be about $2.8 million. That would compare to today's property, which is valued at less than $2.5 million and has a liability in work that needs to be done on the properties of over $1.9 million, so an adjusted value of just over $500,000. Looking at the $1.5 million cost that the town would have to put into relocating Wentworth Hall, there would be a return on that investment of approximately, it would take about approximately 5 years to pay that off. The increase in tax dollars and other receipts that would come to the town over what we have today is significant. Today, looking at the taxes received on the Islington properties that are privately owned of about $68,000. Add to that the rent that we receive at ICC, which is just over $88,000, and subtracting from that the cost of the maintenance of the building of $76,000. The current revenue that's generated today from the 7 properties in Islington Center is just under $81,000. If the project is approved and goes through, the revenue that would be generated, we would have real estate taxes on all the properties, which would be over $470,000, excise taxes of $10,500, continued rent for Wentworth Hall community events of just over $500, maintenance and operation for Wentworth Hall on the same per square foot basis as the ICC. I've calculated that at just over $48,000. I think that's an extreme estimate because you'll be a lot more efficient in the new space and will not cost as much to maintain. And then I've taken the peer review estimator's value of the cost of the school, police, and fire services as a negative of $53,000. That gives us an overall total net revenue to the town after the project of $480,000 to compare to the current $81,000. So that's nearly $300,000 additional revenue per year for a $1.5 million investment. And as I said, so the payback is less than 5 years. Talking about the qualitative values that would come with this project. First, as far as community services, it would enable us to maintain the branch library, youth and family services, the community space, and MMO, all in Islington Center, without any question of whether any of those would cease to exist at that location. In the area of affordable housing, it would enable us to count an additional 12 units on the SHI initially and 14 units when the project is complete. It would provide needed affordable housing to 3 affordable households in that area. From an aesthetic point of view, the design is character appropriate. It would involve an enhancement of New England Village structures that are there, new buildings that would be fully code compliant and fully accessible, as well as energy efficient. From a traffic and parking perspective, the development would allow improvements to the intersection for signalization, especially for an improved left-hand turn situation coming south on Route 1, turning onto East Street. We would also retain the right to the increased right-of-way that would allow us, if needed in the future, to widen that intersection for further improvements. From the parking point of view, the project provides more spaces than are actually required, more than the demand. Right now, there are 100 spaces required, and there are 100 provided. The future condition, I don't recall the exact number that are required right now. I believe it's 163 and 178 provided, so we would have 15 spaces over demand. I might be off by 1 or 2 spaces, but it adds significantly more parking and more parking than is actually needed. And it enables public parking easements over all the private spaces, something that doesn't exist now, so that our residents would be able to park in any space in Islington Center. From an economic development point of view, the project retains all of the existing commercial tenants. It adds new, vibrant retail or restaurant tenants. It serves as a catalyst for further development of some of the underutilized and long-term vacant space on the southern part of Washington Street. And it increases our property tax value to support continuation of the split tax rate. For all those reasons, I recommend that you consider this favorably.
I don't have any questions. I've been involved in this from the beginning, so.
Well, I appreciate the update, the additional information, and the additional work in the negotiations with Mr. Petruzziella. Sounds like we've reached the maximum benefit that
I believe we have.
Are we taking a vote?
You can vote, or I get the sense of a consensus. We'll bring this to the Finance Commission on Monday night and present it to them.
because we aren't voting on the land disposition
We're not.
agreement, because that, we're not authorized to at
Not
this point,
authorized
not
to, so-
unless and until we get that
Until town
authorization from
meeting is
town
done.
meeting.
Yeah. So
I think
this
what you'd
is
be
the-
voting on is a recommendation that the FinCom
Vote favorably.
vote favorably upon the articles.
Okay, public and press. Mr. Layden.
Congratulations on getting up above $2 million. I have just a couple of questions. One, a niggling one, in evaluating.
Why don't you come sit up here, though, because we need you on the microphone.
Thank
and
you.
Dan's leaving. Good luck tonight, Dan.
Thank you.
Hopefully, I won't be that long.
Hi.
But I forgot the order I was going to address things in. But,
There was a needling question. I heard
well,
that.
that's the rental value that you could ascribe to the present ICC, because there's community space and town offices in there. So I think, to be fair, and I don't think it changes your bottom line, there should be some recognition that that's providing a benefit to the town that has a dollar value.
Because that's on both ends of the equation, before and after we have that office space. So anything that was before and after was not taken into consideration. For instance, service costs. There are service costs today on the properties that are there today. New service costs that are over and above those are counted, but the old service costs are not.
Well, not to
Brought into
beat a dead horse, but if you're evaluating today what the ICC gives you, it gives you something that's not on your schedule. So maybe it
It's
It
netted
appears on
against
the one
costs.
schedule and
There are
gets-
costs associated with it, so there's.
Correct.
But it's also laden against the fact that there are no tax dollars coming out of that building. So the fact that we,
Well,
that we put family, youth, and services in there, we're not paying any rent, but you're not getting any tax dollars out
The
of it.
taxes are well covered. It's a big advantage of the project.
I know,
all
I'm
I'm
talking
saying-
about the ICC as it stands
Yeah.
I
now.
think we can make an adjustment for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing is more informational, and that the property, I'm particularly interested in 277A. That property is being transferred to
Which property is that?
That's
That's
the Cohen
the-
House.
the Cohen House? Yeah, the Cohen House. And it's an elevated structure, an elevated land, so I imagine all that has to be excavated. And basically, the way I hear it, the land is going to the developer, and he's going to give that back to us, and by that time, it will be a level parking lot and with parking spaces
Yeah,
and
that's what I
hard topped.
understand. Yes,
Yeah, let's
that's
look
the way
at
I
it on the
understand
map, though.
Yeah. That is the plan, yes.
Yes, so this is the Cohen property back here. It is essentially
here, Adam.
right from here.
Yeah.
So the majority of it will end up being parking space, which
Mhm.
the developer will construct, and then a portion of it would be land for the addition behind Wentworth Hall.
Okay. So when the property gets transferred to him, he's going to do quite a bit of work on it, and I was wondering how he gets compensated for that, or if he gets compensated for it.
That's part of his
part of the
contribution to the
exchange.
project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's taking land that has a 32-space municipal parking lot, and he's returning to us land that
So
has a
that's a considerable
32-space.
amount of
parking
money
lot.
that he's putting into
He is.
the thing.
Yes.
Okay. I think that was it.
I mean, and I think, you can't speak for him, obviously, but I think he would rather do labor for us than cash.
Sure.
Right? So, I mean, it makes sense in that sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Hearing no one. Okay. All right, so I think you have the
Do we vote?
consensus from the board?
Go ahead and vote.
I mean, don't you
Well, it's
think we
not,
should-
it's not,
I know,
it's not,
but- need to,
it's not
so
posted.
I-
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, because there's
I
no
would-
action.
There's no action that you
Okay.
can take.
But we
I-
agree-
The
we
question
agree
for
to
FinCom is
proceed.
where is the Board of Selectmen? The Board of
Right, and I
Selectmen
think we
have-
could report to them that you're all
there's a
supportive of
consensus
the.
behind this plan.
There is a consensus. That's what I'm reading.
I mean, this plan has changed so much. I mean, it started with 28 apartments, it started with a giant CVS with a drive-through, now we're down to under 10,000. We're
And a
now
drive-through.
condos, 18 two-bedroom condos. I mean, it's changed so much. And I will say this for the public, I mean, so many developers have gone bankrupt because they say, oh, we'll give you this big number. And then when the time comes, the bank won't give them that number. And so then we're stuck with nothing. And if the project gets stuck halfway, then we can still end up back with the ICC if it falls apart. And I think the developer is not willing to go bankrupt and does not want anyone to go bankrupt, nor do we, trying to do this project. And so the number of 2.2 and the adjustment later on, I think is fair to everybody. And I just want to state that for the record, that I think that's, you know, I know people would like to say, oh, we're getting $4 million, but in reality, we're selling him a half acre of land. And at $3 million for
$3.9 million
for a
an
half acre
acre.
of land in Westwood. I don't care where you live in Westwood, there isn't any land worth that, not even at University Station. So,
And then there's the one other benefit of the affordable units. When you talked about how the project has changed, we started out with the minimum that were required, 3 units, and we're ending up
I have a 12.
with listing 12 units, 3 actual affordable units, but listing 12. That is a
Non-anticipated
significant
benefit.
benefit.
And I've been here a long time, and one of the real benefits is that there have been several attempts wondering whether or not services, especially the library services, should be continued in Islington Center. And I think when we make the reinvestment in that building and housing some services permanently there and a brand-new building, they're pretty much guaranteed that they're gonna remain there in the long run. We're talking, you know, quarter century, half a century, so, this
We've
is a
accomplished a lot.
huge issue. I mean, there's some people that used to be here that fought to keep that library open down in Islington that would be more than happy that the outcome that we're getting out of this project.
Well, there was once upon a time when budget was really tight and we weren't sure we could keep it operating, and
Mhm.
people really rallied.
Came to town meeting and rallied, yep.
That was an important outcome.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to make sure I heard correctly. With the reappraisal, even if the market's worse, we wouldn't get less than what's
Correct.
on the
Right.
table today?
Correct. That's
So
what-
that's a protection.
that's a
built in.
protection built in, and that's why we built it in, is that if the market goes down, we're not going to town meeting and say that we can take less. This is the absolute number we're guaranteed, and in 3 years, we do the appraisal.
There is
and if it's
upside.
higher, yes,
But there's upside.
So it's a floor.
correct.
Not a
That's the floor, not a ceiling.
And just the disposition agreement, it'll be up on the website tomorrow?
Not tomorrow, we're
No.
hoping.
Probably
we're hoping
Monday.
to get it done by Monday for the Finance Commission.
But it will be, the public will have it before the finance, right?
Well, you probably get it at the same time the Finance Commission, have it available when the Finance Commission has it available. There's still,
Yeah,
the
there's still-
developer is still gonna have an opportunity to take another look at it and to his lawyer and make sure that they are in agreement. We don't wanna have an agreement out there that one party or the other has a problem with,
So
so.
the finance commission is not gonna get this before they vote?
Yes, they will.
Yes, they will.
They have to, yes, they have to.
Yeah, what I'm
But
saying
they'll
is
get
they
it
may
a
get
couple-
it.
They'll get it a day or two, they're not gonna get it that day, that night, right?
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet.
There's still some
We
work
don't know
being done.
exactly when that'll be. I
We're
mean,
going back and forth as we speak.
We'll know when we know. I mean, when there's no more edits going back and forth, then we know we get an agreement. And we're hoping that's the beginning of next week, but we're
They'll
not
have the
positive.
terms of the agreement.
We have the terms,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're just working out the finite little legal languages.
These are legal.
Legalese.
These are
as we like
legal.
to
Well,
say.
I mean, then they need to look at it, so,
Time
it's-
for them
yeah.
to digest.
So I would say, giving them an hour
Well,
is not,
he-
I mean, even the attorney had said, this
Right.
thing takes, it takes
I
4
think you're
times
missing the
reading.
point. The terms of the LDA are known. The agreement itself won't be able to be shared until we are at a point where we're finalized with it.
So what will you be supplying to them then?
They know a lot of the terms already.
We gave them a term sheet. So the terms have been shared with the Finance Commission. The
So they'll
terms
get a
have been-
revised term sheet that increases the amount from 2 million to 2.2
So
million.
we can have a term sheet online.
Right, that's what I would,
And that's
Yeah.
easy, but the LDA agreement, that because of the legal issues, we don't want to have that out there.
Has to do with closings, and then when the next phase takes place, has to take place within 180 days of the certificate of occupancy and, financing and all that stuff is all written in that they're fighting back and forth about exact dates and things like that. So we're almost there. As Dan said, I think we're 95% of the way there. We're almost there, but not quite there yet, so that into the final edits, as late as this afternoon, they were doing more edits.
And have feedback from us tonight.
Mm-hmm.
When is FinCom Monday night?
Monday.
When is FinCom Monday night?
Oh,
7:30.
7:30.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Do we need to meet before FinCom? Do we need to meet before FinCom?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
Anything else? Anybody? Okay.
Motion to adjourn?
Our next meeting is?
Our next meeting is the Board of Selectmen will be attending the FinCom meeting on Monday, April 30th at 7:30 PM at the library. And then our next meeting will be here the following day, Tuesday, which is May 1st at 7:30 here at the police station.
I move we adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.